Hey everybody, it's good to see you again. I'm sorry I don't really make more content. In fact, I'm stealing this Sunday away from myself. Typically is the day of rest. I like to do carpentry for my farm on this day, relax, enjoy the word, and build stuff with my hands. But I think that necessity means that I have to make this video because things are getting very confusing right now, especially for, I guess, the political right. They've gotten a bone, and they don't know what to do with it. Let me put it that way. A little bit of power, a little bit of a boon, and they're squandering it, I think, or about to squander it. We'll see. Could be a good time to learn a lesson. I apologize first off for my appearance. I got my Hawaiian shirt on. I just threw this presentation here together in about 2 hours. So please be patient. Please be okay with the quality. I might have typos. I know you guys can ring me out in the comments if you want. It's fine. It's fine. All right, let's get on with it. So, rules for Righticals. You have power, now what? All right, today we're going to talk about, oh, wrong button, wrong screen. See, told you. Hot the trot here. I don't know what I'm doing. That's all right. We're going to build it as we fly, as they say. Today I want to talk about what rules the right needs to have to govern itself while it is gaining political power, because it will lose all of that political power if it does not understand how to coordinate, how to have rules. Essentially, rules mean roles. So let's talk about that. We have to talk about distinguishing ally, friend, acquaintance, opposition, and enemy. How to become an enemy, right? So what are the qualifications that make you an enemy? Notice that enemy and opposition are not the same thing. We're going to talk about that. And how to forgive an enemy. Okay, that's really important because I think the right forgives way too easily, or not at all. If you never forgive, you look like a monster. If you forgive too easily, you're just inviting in monsters. Okay, so we can figure this out. The right's current mistakes and how to fix them. That's really important. This is just my opinion, but I don't really see anybody else out there putting together some kind of cohesive list of rules here, right? So, and conquest versus liberation. And this is the big conflict of the right. Are you conquerors or are you liberators? And what do you really want to do? I'm going to make the case that you want to be conquerors right now. All right. Introduction. Why'd I call it rules for Righticals? Because part of my Japanese quasi-heritage is that I love puns. You got to just live with it. But it's a pretty good, first off, it grabs on the memetics of the Rules for Radicals, which is a well-known book for how to be a radical. But we're not radicals, we're on the right. So what rules do we have? We definitely do need a governing set of rules for coordination, because I'm seeing messaging all over the place. Some people are saying, yeah, you should forgive, destiny, and it's free speech. And other people are saying that, yeah, glorifying the death of civilians is probably pretty bad and unforgivable, maybe. We'll see. It's actually kind of interesting because thinking about this, I don't think the right has actually really wielded power in living memory. Who has been considered conservative has always been a force of liberalism. So every time that the conservatives or the Republicans have been in charge, it's usually been a time of incredible liberation of some sort, right? It's usually like financial or economic liberation, I guess, but I don't know. It's not the actual right. It's some sort of Yale, Harvard version of it, right? All right, the underlying theory of rules for Righticals right here is you need to start having more than a friend-enemy distinction. It's a good place to start to identify that there are enemies, but you need to have a distinction of your own roles in this political landscape, in the political fight, in the narrative war, as they might say. So every political actor has a role. Traditional liberalism wasn't really built to handle political enemies. It was made in the English, this is what I understand, it was made in the English cultural vein, where they don't really have enemies inside of their own country. I guess they sorted that out a long time ago, and it's usually you have some loyal opposition. So you can have a certain amount of good faith with your opponents, and they will respect certain things. Like lately, the disgust on the right now is that people on the political opposition are glorifying the passing of just normal civilians in the attempt on Donald Trump, right? And that's disgusting a lot of people. That obviously, I mean, to me, that's obvious that should make you into an enemy, not just opposition, right? But do the people on the right actually make a distinction between opposition and enemy? I haven't seen one. Maybe someone has done one, but I haven't seen it. But we do need something new, and I'm trying to help. So this video is really for the influencers of influencers. So if you're seeing this, thank you so much for your time. It'd be my dream if this like met with the likes of Aaron McIntyre, Carl Benjamin, or anybody, or Nima Parvini, of course, anybody who is actually cognizant of the ideological narrative landscape and the kind of psychic war that's going on right now. So, allies, those who share banners share reputation. Allies are representatives. All right. In this way, elected officials are de facto should be your allies. And when they are your allies, they have a certain set of elevated responsibilities. They get elevated status, right? So you'll always defend your allies, but they get elevated responsibilities, which is essentially not to become a liability. We'll talk more about liabilities in a bit. But the most important thing that you have to remember is that they have to have the same metaphysical, philosophical framework upon which they've built their world, or else eventually they will become opposition later. Now, it's okay to have temporary allies, maybe, but it will. You don't get to choose the time when they stop being allies. And one of the most important thing about an ally is that they're, how you say, you can rely on them, right? They're reliable, they're consistent, and having something built in that's going to make you eventually oppose them makes them very inconsistent, and they will switch around and sink in the knife, for their own best interest, the interest of their ideological framework, as soon as it becomes convenient for them, not convenient for you. All right, so what are allies for? Pushing, defending, and shaping and winning the narrative war, right? So we live in a democracy. We don't have actual wars, I hope. We have ideological ones which take place on a sort of narrative battlefront, which includes cultural norms, elected politics, so actually winning the race. I call it psychic packetization, but basically taking a complex set of ideas and values and turning them into a single repeatable phrase is very powerful. It's very, very powerful. And I don't really need to explain why that is, but these things need to be crafted, right? And they need to be repeated. Once you've built something, you need to repeat it. And you see actually a lot on the Democrat side, a lot of failed attempts at packetization. Like they'll say like build back better or something like that. It's a very globalist phrase since I think Boris Johnson started using it too. They're trying, they didn't vet it internally very well enough, right? Like you're supposed to try and packetize things competently, memify it, make it into memetics, and then everybody start using it to normalize it and bringing into the sort of psychic sphere of how people think. That's really important. And an ally should set the example for conduct of their audience. Your allies, the reason why you have different allies is because they reach different audiences and they allow disparate people to coordinate together as if they're one people. That's the important thing. But this ally of yours who is, I haven't really explained very well, I suppose, but let me put it this way. These allies I'm talking about are influencers. Since this is a narrative war, you kind of have narrative generals. Narrative generals are your sort of content creators and message setters. So they need to embody the values of their message. And they need to set the example for the conduct of their audience, or else the audience will start making you all look bad. The main thing I want everyone to take from this presentation is that the right needs to actually start coordinating. I remember the big revelation that our ideological opposition and enemies are all in the same WhatsApp group and they coordinate. And my response to that was, why aren't you? Like, why has God cursed us with such incompetent champions that can't use a WhatsApp group themselves? Like, doesn't your audience deserve better? I think it does. I think I deserve better, honestly. Can you guys like talk to each other so you're not just bumping into each other, right? So anyways, we'll get on to that. My expectations of allies, or the expectations everyone should have, there should be messaging coordination. And this includes public image. Or there shouldn't be people bumping into each other and the message becoming jumbled up, right? The audience can't digest that. If you start giving a lot of complicated messaging that has tons of nuance and tons of opposing views built inside of it, the audience is going to spit it out like it's a lukewarm water. It's not going to work out, right? So you have to coordinate your message and your public image. Metaphysical alignment, right? This is just your ideological framework or your philosophical framework, whatever you want to call it. The way that the operating system upon which you interpret the world needs to be aligned. Or else, again, as I said, you're going to have conflicts later on and you're just building in a jack in the box of treachery. And also, your allies should be effective. They should be able to hold their own keep, defend their own castle. They should be able to field their ideological armies, go out, do the things they need to do. They also, your allies are different from everyone else in that they openly declare loyalty and have unwavering resolve. They don't apologize. They don't go back on the message. They don't sort of sheepishly put the message out there. No, they're by the time it's been coordinated and run through with everybody, it is a full throated, resounding declaration of your message with full resolve. All right. All right. So examples of current allies, they're just off the top of my head. Lotus Eaters, Judge Knapp, Aaron McIntyre, he's really good. Nima Parvini, yeah, he's pretty funny and he's pretty good. He's also a very good interpreter of reality, I think, in that he automatically crafts things into narratives. However, of course, he's got his own personal interpretation, which may not align, right? Brandon Herrera, I decided to stick him on here because he does actually have some political videos and he's run for office in Congress and almost won. So I'd say he's notable. Chris Rufo is changing the cultural framework in terms of the school systems. That's really important. Your school systems have like you could change all the movies and all the television shows you want, but the fact is that your kids are sitting there for 8 hours a day or 6 hours a day, whatever, in front of a teacher getting a script read to them. Like the Coca-Cola company would pay multiple billions of dollars to have that level of influence on children. Like that is the most important. That's the most important advertising time ever. Like if you want the most cultural relevance, it's going to be your schools, bar none. All right, because it also the schools determine the child's success. So it's not just how much of the messaging are they getting. It's the reward structure that the students' lives are built on for 12 years. Yeah, it's the most important cultural landscape. Like if you think that comic books are going to move the needle, then I think you're silly. But that's just my opinion. And all elected politicians should also be allies. They should all conduct themselves well. They should not put out messages that are counter to the narrative you're crafting, nor should they live their life in a way that is counter to the narrative that they're crafting. So, all right, next group is friends. Okay, so you'll see these friends. They should have high fidelity. They should be friendly. They should come in good faith. They should have good faith discussions. These friends are people that might host you on their show. And they are trying to, the main thing is that they humanize you. They allow you to take your message and yourself and go out there in front of another audience that's outside of your current audience and humanize yourself and humanize your message. All right. They don't necessarily have to share your metaphysical framework, your philosophical framework, your operating system upon which you interpret reality. That's fine. It's actually kind of a good thing because it might help people question their own framework. When they see conflict, when people see conflict, they always have to make a decision. All right. And the decision might be in your favor. And your friends don't mind because they might have very little political stake or they're neutral or they're slightly favoring you. Who knows? They don't have to understand your worldview, but they can still be a friend. Right? They do not apply filters or blinders to your audience. Main thing about this is that they are honest, so they allow you to humanize yourself. So filters is they take your message and they sort of bias it in one direction, either through their line of questioning or their own framework or them trying to trip you up. Who knows, right? So friends don't do that. Friends do not also apply blinders to their audience by editing out sections of your message. Like they let you stand fully out there, right? And that's why people like Joe Rogan are so successful, because they're long form, it's unedited, it's the full message of everything. These guys can also be friends by having your opposition on and then showing how vapid and uninformed your opposition is compared to you. So even though the other person's not there, this is the internet and nothing ever goes away. So every time you message out there, it's really a debate because the reaction content that can be had, as well as the comparison that can be made. So you could give an interview 1 month and then your opposition gives an interview the next month. Without you realizing it, it might turn into a debate, basically, between people reacting, people analyzing, all that stuff. Friends are mostly for humanizing you. All right. Spreading your narrative as well is also good, but people don't really think with reason. Your narrative has to be something that touches them on an emotional level. Cultural norm shaping is important too, because they get to see you interact with someone that's not one of your people, right? So people get to see you explain something from the ground up in a way that they might understand if they are unfamiliar with you or even in opposition to you. All right. They can even provide, your friends can provide soft opposition to you as well. This means that they can sort of field ideas that are outside of your sphere with you and let you react to them or even digest them and take them on board, right? Part of humanizing is compromising. Giving some charity to the opposition makes you look good compared to everyone, unless, of course, that person's an enemy. This also allows, the humanization also allows you to change your public image and helps you reach narrative escape velocity. In other words, your narrative can now escape your own social sphere. Okay, so friends are important. Expectations of friends, they should always be good faith. If they all of a sudden start editing your interviews or representing you in a way that is not high fidelity, then they've lost friend status. They're gonna become opposition or even enemy, depending on it, right? They should have some loyalty in that they won't aid people that actually want you hurt or unalived or whatever YouTube wants me to say it. Like people who actually wish harm upon you, your friends shouldn't parley with them, right? They shouldn't provide aid to the enemy. Be willing to platform you given a significant event, right? So if something controversial happens, they'll be the ones to give you a voice. That's very much appreciated. That's very good friend language. It's good for them. It's nice if you're a regular guest, but it at least helps you get your message out there with an audience that is not instantly demonized or an audience that instantly hates you. Okay, so current friends of the right. I think Tim Pool, The Quartering, Archcast, Chris Williamson, Side Scrollers, Peter Boghossian. I put Peter Boghossian on there because he is actually an example of an opposition who is also a friend. He's ideologically opposed, but he's willing to have a high fidelity conversation. He does try to bend things, of course, but that's because he's got his own worldview, and that's fine. He wants to promote it as well as question yours. That's okay. I put Archcast and Side Scrollers pending review because right now I think they're giving shelter to the enemy, which would be Dev in this case. Because Dev said some pretty nasty things that were very dehumanizing of people on the right, and civilians should be, I mean, even the influencers should be out of the realm of that kind of demonization and that kind of dehumanization. But civilians, absolutely. I mean, just regular people, regular voters, regular. That's beyond the pale. So I don't think, in my opinion, they should not be. I don't know if Archcast has actually had Dev on lately. I know Side Scrollers did. And I don't approve of that at all, just straight up. And if you have Destiny on, that's full out. But as far as I'm concerned, they're both the same. Dev and Destiny have done the same things. So acquaintance, be very cautious. There's no such thing as neutrality. Neutrality means they're not predictable, so you don't know what they're going to do. They might edit you later. They might do something insane. I don't know. So people don't usually stay as acquaintances for very long. You expect them to be unaffiliated and you expect them to be honest, but almost nobody is. If they're just an acquaintance, unless they've declared themselves a friend, and even then, like all friends are under the microscope. Everyone's under the microscope. Nothing is taken on full faith here. But we look at your actions and see if it aligns with your role. You should not assume that these people are going to stay neutral, especially because the kind of vitriolic political climate we live in. That's just not going to happen. That's okay. Just be careful. Be careful. All right. Opposition, right? Has ideological and political goals opposing yours. However, they still abide by some common rules of decency. I called it CROD or CRD if you want to get rid of the O in there. I'm not a meme smith, okay? And I only have 2 hours on a Sunday to do this. So the opposition, you should expect them to undermine you, but they should be within the common rules of decency. They will openly and honestly argue against your points, so they are going to meet you at the ideological, they're going to meet you on the rational level or even the sentimental level, but they're going to do so openly, okay? And they will accept it when you win, and they'll be gracious when you lose. This is a sustainable relationship, having opposition. In fact, it's quite beneficial to have opposition. You don't want to be a rigid society. You need to be somewhat flexible, and flexibility requires that you have sort of mimetic mutations that will come about over time that will challenge your ideas. It'll either strengthen your ideals or it'll give you some flexibility to pursue new ideas, right? You shouldn't punish these. These guys are not to be punished, right? They're honest opposition. Everyone's loyal to the same banner. Everyone's friends, really, at the end of the day. They do not engage in, so this is a major part. They do not engage in unjustified reputational damage. This is the big part that makes someone an opposition versus an enemy. If you've done something bad, they're going to make a video on it, right? But they're not going to demonize you. And the thing is, we don't have a lot of actual opposition because almost everybody in Western politics absolutely especially from the left, completely dehumanizes their opposition. Like, it's okay to say that their policies are, this politician's policies are bad or they're out of touch or something like that. But to say like they're like pure evil or a representative of mid-century Germans is insane. That makes you an enemy, right? I don't know. Jimmy Dore, he's an example of opposition, I guess. Honest opposition. I don't know. If you could think of some, put them in the comments. But all right, I want to talk about enemies, right? Does not abide the common rules of decency. And this can also mean your allies. An ally who does not abide by common rules of decency are liabilities. They're people that are on your side that's going to make your side look really bad, and you need to treat them like enemies. If they have any use, you should get it out of them and then dispose of them as fast as possible. These are your enemies are your ruthless opposition. They don't want to just win and you lose. They want you gone. They consider you an existential threat, and they will say so. And they will do anything to win. So they will pull out every sacred cow they will slaughter, every rule that is binding the sentiment of the people, and every rule that you have that binds the sentiment of the people, they will try to break it, right? They will defy social norms, and they will reestablish new social norms that make you intrinsically and inherently outside of polite society, and essentially want you banished or even gone, right? This is very dangerous. You cannot sustain a peoples with enemies within, right? So common rules of decency, which I think is a pretty low bar, is basically don't be a traitor and don't be a liability. You need to act your role. So allies should act like allies. Allies come to each other's aid. Allies coordinate. It's just like a war. They should value human life. I think that's a pretty low bar to set, and that bar was not able to be met by several public speakers. And why members of the right would ever have those speakers on their show is insane to me and disgusting to me. And I think most of the audience of these right-wing speakers agrees. They don't want to see these degenerates on those shows. Those people don't value human life. To them, the value of human life is conditional. And there's something horrendously wrong with that. That breaks the pales of decency. Common rules of decency also includes they should value honesty and truth. Like, if you bring them truth, they should be able to put down the rhetorical slings and arrows and acknowledge, yeah, okay, that's true, right? That there's some sort of centering pivot point for their narrative. Hopefully it's grounded in reality and truth, at least mostly. And they should also act in their constituents and / audience's best interests. They're not trying to siphon off resources. They're not a parasite. Basically, they're not a parasite. They're trying to do something that's beneficial to their audience, while sustaining their own lifestyle, I guess, right? They should conduct themselves with dignity. Another good example of this is someone who violates his common rules of decency is Nick Fuentes. Right? He's supposed to be on the right, but he makes the right look really bad all the time because he's a person. He's Nick Fuentes. He's a pain in the butt. He looks like a kid I want to just sit him down and be like, listen, dude, you got to take this Ritalin or something. I don't know. He's got problems, and he has no place in the right. Whatever. His lack of dignity is very damaging. So he's not in the common rules of decency. Like, he's degrades polite society, so should not be a part of it. Appropriate levels of emotionality per the occasion, right? So, what I'm trying to say with this one is they don't emotionally manipulate. They will meet the occasion, but they're not. Common rules of decency is that you're not emotionally manipulative to your audience or to the opposition. You should be appropriate, right? So if someone does like a hot burnout on a pride crosswalk, that's not the worst thing in the world. That might have been an accident. So to put tons of emotion on that is just very manipulative to your audience. Same thing on the other side of the aisle, like shouting civil war for months and months is a little bit. It's a little bit up here, but maybe the event was actually kind of down here, right? It's a little bit manipulative. Be open and honest about intentions. That's a borderline case, by the way. A lot of this stuff is a bit subjective, but it also has to be weighed with the person's manner and their use. Anyways, be open and honest about intentions. That's always good. It's not good to have a snake. Audience, civilians, bystanders should stay out of the crossfire. Okay, so that point, last point, and the second point, yeah, those are violated big time. That's beyond the pale of decency. There's no reason to treat someone who violates those two rules as a person worth listening to or seeing or knowing they exist, they should just go. So they're an enemy pretty much to everybody, I would say, but they're definitely our enemy if they do that. All right, treachery and how to treat traitors. What is a traitor? Someone who gives shelter or aid to an enemy. That is an act of treachery. Okay, so having some, like, paying one of these enemies to, if an ally or a friend pays a speaking fee or an appearance fee to someone who has advocated for your unaliving, yeah, that's an act of treachery, just straight up. Like, that person's an enemy, and you put money in their pocket and you help perpetuate their lifestyle where they get to continue spouting off advocations of your ending. Yeah, that's not really cool. I think it's a very low bar to say, don't help people that want me dead. It's a very low bar. And somehow the right is having a big debate on whether or not that bar is appropriate. It's not even a debate. Anyone who doesn't get that right off the bat is a liability, as far as I'm concerned. All right. Anyone who treats with traitors as a traitor is an enemy. There is a stink that gets attached to it. The way you treat traitors is exile and excommunication. It used to be that Christians used to do this. Now they just let everybody in. It's very stupid. It's supposed to be an elite religion. Not so much anymore, thanks to the West. It still is with me. Those people who have done this are unclean and their filth is contagious. Anyone they touch, like, you don't want to be seen with them. You don't want to be talking with them because everyone's going to put you under the microscope now. That's the way it should be. There should be some level of inquisitorial like volition here. There's some sort of inquisitorial edict out there that says, like, this person is a non-person. You can't talk to them anymore because the stuff they say is going to unravel our entire civilization and send us into sectarian violence, right? And that's not too much to ask. Don't talk with and treat with people that want to destroy our world. Be nice, And any ally should be taking part in the reputation destruction of the traitor. Like, full-throated, part of the coordination. If that traitor steps out of line and starts going off script and starts compromising the effort, you have to just basically go full broadside, blast them to, blast their reputation to pieces, right? So, how to forgive enemies, liabilities, and traitors. Obviously, I'm being a bit hyperbolic here, but forgive as the Lord forgives, right? And the criteria for forgiveness that the Lord demonstrates is, first off, they have to apologize. Right? You can't forgive someone who hasn't apologized. I don't know how that works, right? You don't have to be mad at them, but you cannot let go of the debt that they have levied until they have acknowledged that they have put a debt upon you, that they've taken something from you, and what they've taken is they've done tremendous damage to you. So they have to be willing to settle the damages, whatever that might be. They also have to be willing to defang or even deplatform themselves. They only need to show the willingness. So sometimes you don't actually call them on it. They have to just say, though, that I'm willing to. If I was one of these people that said these disgusting things, I would probably say in an apology, I'm willing to delete my channel if that's what you guys want, to make restitution. I would probably try and have an interview with the family, have some sort of apology, make good, and let them decide, right? You put yourself at the mercy of those you have aggrieved, and you acknowledge that that's the way to make things right? But do remember that you're an avatar of your audience. So if this influencer who has betrayed your audience, if they've done a tremendous amount of damage to your audience, and your audience is still mad, you don't get to forgive them because now your audience is going to consider you a traitor as well. You don't have the authority to forgive on behalf of other people. But the thing is about being an influencer and being on the internet is that you are on behalf of other people. And you can't get away from that. You have a responsibility, or your audience will just eat you alive. And your career will be over so fast, especially in these tumultuous times where the stakes are getting higher and higher. Like the most powerful man in the world, potentially again, right? Almost got taken off the chessboard by the skin of an inch, by a single inch. Literally, the republic was 1 inch away from absolute destruction. I think your audience is going to be a little bit sensitive to that, and you're going to have to understand they are they're not going to be quite all like, we're free speech absolutists anymore. Okay, the times are changing, and you need to know where your audience stands, or you're going to lose them. Anyways, All right, on allies who violate the common rules of decency. This is I call it the Nick Fuentes rule. They are just massively damaging to your own effort, right? If they're a snake that operates well, like they're competent, but they've got a lot of skeletons in their closet, right? It's tempting, but it's a bad idea. If they don't embody the values that you have, you should probably not parlay with them, because as soon as that gets brought out, as soon as their real self gets brought out, it could be massively damaging, and it could be a big boon for your opposition and even your enemies to destroy your narrative, right? The behavior secrets and true motives of your snakes will be massively damaging. I'd say don't engage, right? It's better not to have that advantage. If they do bring a lot to the table but are a liability, they can be a distant friend. So you have to distance yourself, like pre-distance yourself. Maybe even pre-disavow them, but acknowledge they have a point. That's always a good place to be. Is like, listen, I don't like what this guy says, and in fact, 99% of what he says I hate, but this 1% is absolutely true, and it's absolutely earth-shattering. And I'm going to take that message now, decouple it from that person, and now I've got it, right? Take the ball from them. Take the ball. They should be exploited. If you have someone who's on your side but a massive liability, you should be grabbing from them whatever narrative value you can, and then immediately throwing them away, because they will destroy you. Okay. The common rules of decency prevents your allies from becoming liability. That's really what the common rules of decency mean. It's a governing set of rules. And by the way, I don't make up all these rules, okay? It's up to you guys to make them up. I'm not some influencer, right? So you make up your own rules of decency. They're designed to keep you from becoming a liability. This is the coordination. Like laws and rules are part of coordination. Okay. So right now, the failings and flailings of the right, lack of coordination leads to messaging conflicts, right? Especially when it comes to destiny. Like people are not agreeing on what to do with that. I think most of the people are coalescing to an agreement, but that should have happened in private, because you're having messaging conflicts out in public, which causes all of your respective audiences to have conflict. And you're going to have fracturing, which is how you get defeated, okay? Open debates confuse the audience. The lack of distinguishing from ally, friend, opposition, enemy also confuses things. A lot of the right doesn't really seem to understand their audience. They can't read the room, as the left likes to say. And if they don't understand their own audience very well, they can't lead their audience through this interesting time. Like, the reason why people listen to you as an influencer is because you help them make sense of the world. Your operating system can handle the kind of crazy data that's coming in right now, okay? If you don't understand how to process that data to deliver it to your audience will start to become disillusioned and confused. If your operating system is not up to handling all that data, then they will also become disinterested and confused, and you'll lose everything. All right. What made the left successful? They built should be past tense, sorry. They built narratives made in a single hour. All right. They build narratives which people can follow. That's how they became successful. They built these narratives, and the narratives became myths, and then the myths became something like a brand upon the soul of the people. People just believed it because it was part of how they grew up. It was part of the values. The mythology of this is part of their character, so that they cannot separate themselves from it. You have to start doing that, right? Building narratives takes a lot of coordination, right? You cannot have a bunch of different nuanced ideas flying around that kind of sort of coalesce into a narrative. That's not how narratives work. Narratives work because you internally vet the ideas that go into it. You should have debates behind closed doors about the truth of something, and then give it to the public. Because if the public can see everything, all of the process, they're gonna start throwing into doubt, right? People just want to believe what they're told. That is a fact. When I go to the auto mechanic and they tell me how they're going to fix my car, I want to just believe what I'm told about my car. But if I have a second mechanic come out and start telling me other stuff about my car, or even tell me how they started fixing my car to find all these problems, it can start to open up doubt, right? Most people just want to be served most people have faith in you, okay? If you think that that's these people that believe that, that think this way are stupid, what they're doing is they're having faith in you. They're offloading and outsourcing their critical thinking to you because they trust you. So don't confuse them. Give them a nice, clean answer. If you were getting a cancer diagnosis, you would want a clean answer, okay? And people right now treat politics as serious as cancer. So for the love of goodness, coordinate, have a single narrative and don't have all this sausage making out here for the public to see. And you must make this narrative appeal to people in their time and place. Now, let's talk about what made the left fall apart. Their narratives, right? They lost touch with the people. They tried to build a new man inside the university, and this became in opposition to the people. They end up having their people and the people. Their people are ravenous and crazy and have their own ideology that's completely foreign to normal people, right? This is where people say woke, right? Wokeness is about their people. That's the ideology of their handcrafted new men. And they tried to appeal intrinsically opposing sides, so they can't coordinate a narrative anymore. The narrative breaks down because they have intrinsically opposed sides. As a example, I put LGBTQ plus and Palestine, because the Palestinians are not tolerant to LGBTQ plus. So eventually the narrative starts to break, and the narrative cycle started becoming way too rapid. Everybody's kept changing their minds a whole lot, whether it was from the Voldemort disease or from Ukraine or from whatever. It's just the cycle of ideological change has been way too much. I mean, I didn't live through civil rights, but it seemed like civil rights was a big deal for like a decade, and that was their main theme. You know, that and the war. Obviously, it's a war. There's a reason to have that, and you can take the war and frame it as a civil rights issue, so it all becomes part of it and coalesces. But these have been so many opposing and strange, like whiplash ideas. The narrative is breaking down. It's almost like the author used to write these big long chapters that made sense, and all of a sudden he's writing 2 or 3 pages about things that have nothing to do with each other, and people can't keep up anymore, right? And it is demoralizing to have people with cognitive dissonance and ideological whiplash. All right. How the right can take the ball and run with it. So the left is dropping the ball. Hey, all right, that's great. Now, can you take it and run with it, or are you going to take it and fumble with it, and then they'll regroup and pick it back up again, right? You need to coordinate. Always value truth. The truth is your grounding star. It's the North Star. It's Polaris. You can always find it, and you can always use it to find your way. If you guys get lost, you can use it to recenter yourself. Center on a set of metaphysical values, so philosophical values, that operating system we're talking about how do you process, how do you interpret data that comes into the world. You should center on one of those, all right, and have the one mind of it, and then continue to indoctrinate on that as much as possible, right? Indoctrinate isn't teach people how to think that way. It's not like you're like putting a chip in their head, although sometimes that NPC meme is pretty funny. Vet your allies carefully, because they might go counter narrative as in maybe by their lifestyle or by their messaging or by their ideology or mindset. It could be opposed to yours, in which case they will spontaneously betray you at the worst possible time. This is why libertarians are considered liabilities. They're kind of considered backbiters, because they will undermine the conservative messaging all the time, and that's not good to have. That's not good to have an ally with, someone who undermines you. Manage your messaging with the people in mind. Always know your people and make the message for them. This is an a la carte thing, right? Like food changes, right? Sushi from 20 years ago is not the same as sushi now. Okay, why would the politics not change with the people? Why would the narrative not change with the people? It's their story. Okay, we've relaunched Batman like 5 or 6 times now, right? You can't. You need to relaunch your ideological framework as well, your narrative, right? You need to re-up your narrative. Okay, make the new story. Say that you're like it's an echo of the old days, whatever, and extend that narrative to include this generation, or you're going to lose it. You need to always make it fresh for the people of the time and place. Okay. Great men are lifted by their people, so they must be built of and for those people, the people. I say the people because that is sort of the populist mass that arises that wants to be governed. Like they want to be governed, and they want to be looked after, and they want to join. And you have to be of and for those people to have the people. And if you lose the mandate of the people, it becomes extremely difficult to stay in power, right? It's the Machiavellian thing, right? The love of the people is better than any castle for protecting you. Yeah, have a nice strong castle. All right. So for the first time in history, can we end the cycle, right? We live in a cycle where our traditions and our genetics and memetics were haphazard, I would say. Circumstantial would be a nicer way of saying it. Certain traditions would help people live, and certain traditions would end up in people dying. Okay. And it was this Darwinian game of who's going to survive and who isn't. And right now we have the resources and mental frameworks to actually analyze our traditions in a number of ways, mathematically, biologically, geographically, anthropologically, uh, was it psychiatrically. So we have all these tools. Can we actually create the narrative that is for our people and make it purposeful? Right? Instead of doing this Darwinian game. Could the right lead us into an age where traditions are cemented in reason, tethered to sentiment, and made purposely for the time, place, and people they cater to? Like, can you build a civilization? Because right now, the Western civilization is crumbling. Can you purpose build one? All of these civilizations have happened on accident, and we only see the end result of those civilizations right now, because all the ones that didn't make it have died. Like, we've got major survivor bias when it comes to the nations and ethnos that you see around the world. Okay, that's not the way I want to live. I don't want to live by the haphazard survival. I would like to maybe engineer a civilization from the ground up. Can we do that? And I'll leave you all with this, right? Liberation is just to throw the dice of civilization yet again. Liberation is to say, hey, you're free. Congratulations. Go on and do whatever you want to do without any structure whatsoever. And we'll see who survives. We'll just see who survives. Maybe 90% of people will survive. Maybe 10% of people will survive. But I'm kind of tired of things moving and changing all the time and degrading all the same. Conquest, though, is to take ownership. It has become the author of your people's future. Use all the tools given to you with all the humility of a once beaten people. Right now, we're very humbled. Okay, that's good. That's good to be humbled, because we're not going to try and engineer utopia. That's not what we're doing here. We don't want a utopia. We just want a civilization that we feel like we belong to and belong in, that is appealing to our sensibilities of our people at this place and time, right? And can you conquer your time in history? In other words, make a purposeful civilization that has values that you can feel a part of, right? So hopefully you guys got something out of that. I've been wanting to get off my chest. I'm seeing that there's a lot of confusion on how to coordinate with power on the right. And I don't know, it's kind of making me disinterested, because I'm not interested in following the actions of a football team that doesn't practice as hard as they could. And right now I see people just appealing to vague and abstract principles rather than anything resembling a concerted effort to win the playing field, with the exception of the people who are allies. Let me go back to the people that are allies. Yeah, there we go. These guys seem to be wanting to win. I like these guys. If they keep this up and they coordinate, maybe it'd be nice. Watch each other's content, understand each other's points of view. I saw some great stuff with Tim Pool and Carl Benjamin the other day. Fantastic. Watch that stuff. All right, guys. Hey, thank you so much if you made it through the video this long. I'm trying to help out, and I've got a lot of work on this farm to do, so I haven't been making a lot of content or videos or ideas, but I have been thinking a lot, and I just had to jump in. I appreciate you guys listening to it. I hope you process it. I hope it's helpful to you, and I will see you guys later.